Everyone, welcome. So today I'm going to be talking about AI and language services, separating fact from fiction. And there sure is a lot of the fiction out there. I apologize in advance if there's a little bit of background noise. It was the quietest place I could find in the airport, unfortunately. Okay, so let's look at one of the things that's been going around a lot lately. There is the MIT study. 95% of all AI projects fail. Well, guess what? About 95% of all IT projects fail. It's not a big deal. Okay, it's being spun out of proportion. The reality is they're also measuring wrong. Can you label any project that you've ever done that you get full ROI in 6 months? And they're measuring it on a 6-month timescale and saying it hasn't done return on investment yet. You don't get return on investment in 6 months. You get return on investment in 3 years. No tangible benefits. Well, there's a lot of reason for that, and a lot of that comes down to the board. It comes down to stupid decisions, throwing away, nearly 50 years of best practice, bringing it all together, and instead just saying, let's just go and do things. We're going to throw away all the guardrails. We're going to throw away all the standards, the best practices, the things we know how to do, the pain points we already learned from. But it's AI. We've got to do it because everyone else is doing it. We have to hurry. And it doesn't help when you get things like, for example, you get organizations coming out and saying, hey, we did this and failed. And you're seeing it very visibly. So it's quite a problem. People are chasing visible wins, but there are massive wins behind the scenes. And, if you look at it the other way, 5% are incredibly successful. So what do you need to do to be in that 5%? So avoid the causes of failure. Lack of workflow integration, customization, they're often really brittle and inflexible. The systems don't learn or retain content. And executive management, they turn around and say, hey, let's do some cost savings and get rid of people rather than let's amplify people and increase their build. So you're seeing companies and organizations hollowing out from the inside years and decades of experience, thinking they can replace them with AI, and then very quickly finding their mistake. They can't. Okay, so let's look at what's on the other side. There is a learning period. So that 95% failure, people are giving up in many cases before they've even had the chance to learn. They make their investment and it disappears. So we need flexible, interoperable workflows that work well and really clear things up and make things easy to work with. Now, let's go on the other side of this. So success is not an accident. If 95% fail, what do the 5% do that actually work? Right? What are they doing differently? So they're integrating AI directly into their business workflows where work actually happens, not as an afterthought. A lot of these tools are afterthoughts at the moment. They don't do things like vibe coding. Vibe coding is the biggest scam in the industry. It leaves you with decades of technical debt. The only thing vibe coding is good for is for actually doing prototypes. But once you've done your prototype, get away from vibe coding. Design for people, not for technology. Amplify the human skills. And this is something I'll push on multiple times. So I know a lot of people think about AI and they call it AI slop, but it's the old story with anything in IT, garbage in, garbage out. So if you feed garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Learn how to do proper prompts. Learn how to work with the machine. Learn how to actually use the machine as a cognitive partner to surface information, adapt and find things, and then apply them. Don't just say, go and write me something, go and change something. Think of it this way. If you had your youngest, least knowledgeable intern join your company, what would you tell them to bring their skills up to the level that you need them? That's what you need to tell the AI. You can't just say, hey, go do it. It's not going to do it. Right? Now, you're in the language industry, so you know about translation and things like that in context. So a simple example, I caught a virus. If you tell an AI, I caught a virus, what's it going to do? It's going to pick one. It's going to say medical virus or computer virus based on its best guess. If you give it more information saying I'm at a hospital and I caught a virus, you've got better context. It still could be a computer, and so on. Build for measurable ROI, focus on the outcomes and prove the value early. okay? Keep iterating, make it better. Really important, own your stack and your data. Make digital sovereignty a non-negotiable part of the principle. Vendors I'm seeing in all industries that are focusing on sovereignty and keeping data, services, knowledge in your country out of control of some of the big guys are where they're winning. Okay, establish a actual continuous feedback loop. Now, while I'm on the topic of digital sovereignty, I'm actually writing a book on the topic at the moment. If anyone's interested in learning more, let me know. I'll be mentioning this a few times in terms of sovereignty and what it means in the terms of localization as we go through the content today. Now, don't fall for the quickest, brightest, shiniest tools. Yesterday, ChatGPT launched a product called Atlas. It's their own browser, and it automates everything for you. It watches you, and then it goes ahead and fills in forms and does things for you. It's an absolutely fantastic experience to use, right? It really is. It's truly unbelievable to watch it and see it just taking over and doing all the things you do so you don't have to repeat them. Now, I can see this happening in localization very quickly. The problem is there was a zero-day breach. These companies are in a rush. They're rushing things to market, and within 24 hours, there was a security breach. Now, if it can do the things you can do, that means it can get into your bank account. It can get into all the things that you do. It can log in, access your password repositories. It pretends to be you in the browser. And that's exactly how they cheated it yesterday. They cut the corner, they went around the side, and they got straight in. Okay? So within one day, this system was breached. Okay? That's bad. It was too early to launch. OpenAI said, oh, sorry about that. We'll add some guardrails, right? The CISO says, oh, agents can make mistakes. Sorry about that. Are you going to trust your bank to an agent from OpenAI? This is the kind of thing you can get into. Buying things with your credit card that you didn't want to buy, exposing your private data. Okay, they've done a partial solve. They haven't done a full solution, and it's a hack. Okay, it's a big lesson. With vibe coding, there was a CEO recently who played with vibe coding and he put it on his production database. And behind the scenes, it deleted his entire production database. It was gone. It was set up to never do that, but it did it anyway. And that's the problem. Okay. So, if you look at OpenAI, they're doing business, 7 years of business is being compressed down to 7 months. That's the sort of speed they're working, but sometimes they need to slow down. But that's where the industry is going, making decisions and moving at that speed. Now, I just found something in Grammarly a couple of days ago. So I mentioned I'm writing a book, so I thought, oh, I'll go and use Grammarly to help check my spelling mistakes, my grammar, and write things a little bit better. Suddenly, I found out behind the scenes, just by prompting their tools, that it's just sending stuff to ChatGPT. So they've got their own prompts and their own guides. But what I was finding, and I used Grammarly for this, was that I was doing AI tests using the Grammarly tools that say how much of this document would be detected as AI. And it was coming back and taking my human written content and doing minor markups, which sounded good to me when I read it, but suddenly it was being flagged as AI generated content, even though it was 99% my own human written. So there's those kinds of problems you have to be aware of. Now, they hid this in the back. A quick couple of prompts was able to expose that in their tool. And I've had a go at them already about GDPR violations because they're sending all your data straight to ChatGPT. ChatGPT's in a lawsuit with New York Times right now, and every single request going to ChatGPT is being logged permanently in case it's needed. So even though ChatGPT is supposed to delete things, they're not because they can't due to a court ruling. So these are the kinds of things you have to be aware of. Okay, so let's look at the state of language services. So the promise, of course, is, translation, subtitling, data processing at a global scale. Okay, and we really need to start separating the fact from fiction. How good is it now? And how good can it be? And it really can be good. It can do a lot of great things, but it's also got a lot of limitations. Okay, so hype often overexceeds capability. The myths will replace humans, and the real true strength here is in the multiplier, not the substitution. So if you're a linguist, look at using these tools the right way. Look at using them to amplify your knowledge, amplify understanding. And I'll show you some real world examples of these shortly of how to actually do it. I'll show you how as a non-specialist in many areas, you can understand things. And, we're writing a very small POC for one of our government customers in Australia right now, and we had to laugh at their requirement. They want a translator of Gen Z English to what they call pension English. So they want to translate what the kids are saying. This is in a law enforcement scenario, so that normal older people can understand them. So we've actually just put that into play for them as a POC. Now, we'll show you how that's achieved very quickly and very easily in a few moments. Okay. So obviously there's widespread adoption. LLMs don't solve every problem. AI is not just LLMs. And we need to look at the results, understand the quality gaps, and work towards solutions. Okay. So first of all, what's the real story? Well, it can handle billions of words at speed, but it's not a replacement for humans. It excels at scale, speed, structure, but humans do nuance better still at the present, and they're trustworthy better. Okay? A machine cannot be trusted yet. Now, there's tools coming into play that are making them more trustworthy. That still doesn't mean they are trustworthy. Okay? Post-editing, and this is where they can be very powerful. Okay? And we have a whole range of tools for that. So we have a technology called TACA, right? Translation Automated Quality Assurance. And it's not that just similar to the Taos scoring, except it's based on AI analysis. But there's lots of blind spots, cultural trust gaps, things like idioms. We're now able to do idioms extremely well, okay, but it's part of a process. It's not part of translation. And we actually look at the content before we translate it and find all the idioms and all the metaphors, and we build a runtime glossary. And then, and only then, do we translate. Okay, so we look at how it's being used. And I saw an example without the runtime glossary a few days ago in German. The literal translation in English said, "was delivered at my feet in a box with a bow on it." And I was looking at it going, what on earth is that? I have no idea what that means. I applied the tools and it changed to delivered on a silver platter. So even as an English speaker, I couldn't guess what they were trying to say, but it came through pretty fast. Okay, so automated scoring is great, but it's not that accurate if you're only doing it at a sentence level. You need to do it at a paragraph level or even a document level for it to be accurate. Okay. I've seen a number of people come through and find that sentence level is just rubbish. The AI tools just don't work. I'll show you some examples in a little while about Comet, which is one of the common tools. And again, it's more sentence level in most cases, and it doesn't always agree with humans. And that's where there is a problem. Okay, so when we look at the industry, the surveys are saying it's flat to sort of slightly growth revenue levels, but there's a hidden truth. Largely, the growth is not in translation. It's in next door services, the ones that are right adjacent. For example, the same people using similar skills, but adapting them for data annotation, data collection, not core localization, but next door. I know some vendors that are now doing over 50% of their revenue compared to a year ago. They've moved and they're doing 50-50 localization versus data creation. That means fewer localization PMs and engineers needed by year. It's going down. The revenue is more stable in particular spaces like e-learning verticals, but deal sizes are dropping and clients are dropping. Right. So, there are challenges. When you take it to the next level and you look at the economics, okay, usage-based fees, they're going up. Mandatory top-ups, things like that. Look at phrase and several of the other ones. The per word cost inflation is going up substantially. Even per word LSPs are dropping down, right? The price is dropping, yet the per word from the technology vendors is going up. TMS costs are rising and they're getting really silly, right? I have some customers who their TMS costs are now exceeding their ERP costs. So, for example, a phrase is costing more than Oracle NetSuite. Okay, this is a significant issue, and it's really changing. Right. So mid-sized LSPs are really hurting. Larger ones may be able to absorb that a bit better, but mid-sized LSPs are having a real problem. So, you really have to look at it when, just over a couple of years, the TMS costs have gone from 5% to 13% of the linguist costs. That's a substantial amount. The tools are supposed to scale with efficiency, but now they're actually draining quality. So people really need to be aware of that. I'm really sorry about the background noise, folks. This was really the quietest spot I could find. Okay, let's look at how people are positioning it. If everyone saw the Wolf on Wall Street, the end, he's saying, "Sell me this pen." Well, the answer to that is every tool uses that label now. It's a dumb label. At this point, it's like new and improved version, or bigger size, or whatever it may be. So there are those kinds of things. Okay. Now, when we look at the LLMs, then we need to look at how they apply. They don't replace everything. There's better tools for LLMs than translation when they're on their own, right? If you use LLMs just for translation, most of the time it fails, especially in single shot translation. We use a combination of machine translation and LLMs, and we get a whole range of things. So, for example, we use an LLM to extract things that are difficult to translate. We pre-process and build a glossary at runtime that we feed into neural machine translation. So we get runtime glossaries that are auto-generated based on context. So, don't look at it as the whole car. It's just the motor, and you've got to go out and do the other pieces. Look at domain-specific tuned models, data pipelines for ingesting, cleaning, normalization, and governance. Keeping humans in the loop. This is important. Right? Linguists, editors, and subject experts all need to be there. The workflow orchestration. You need to start integrating into workflows, not just static translations. Right? Pushing into platforms that are helping. Right? Not just the traditional model of here's a document, here it is back, or localize this game data, here it is back. We're talking about very rapid turnarounds. Digital sovereignty and security is really important, as I mentioned with Grammarly as an example. Evaluation and QA of the models needs to be continually tested, especially when you're changing content, especially when models change. Models are getting better all the time, but just changing a model doesn't make it better. Evaluate it and make sure it truly is. Okay. Most importantly, user training. Don't just say, here's some tools, go, because I've seen so many people do it wrong. And I'll give you one simple little tip. Whatever prompt you do today, the phrase before it, on this task, you'll double the quality every time. That simple phrase, ruminate on this task. Okay, it's really that simple. It makes a huge difference. Okay, so let's look at some trade-offs between large language models and small language models, because this is where things are going. Okay, large language models are really good for general knowledge, broad capabilities, but they're high cost, less control, and they hallucinate a lot more. Smaller domain models are fast, cheap, and much higher accuracy. You can train your own at this point. There are toolkits to do it, and it's relatively straightforward and also quite low cost. There's a bunch of surprising trends. So domain-tuned small models are performing some of the biggest models on a consistent basis. Lower compute costs, lower storage requirements, smaller GPUs. I've seen some of these now running on cell phones and even Raspberry Pis. They're getting that fast, that small. The cost performance curve is now a factor that fits for purpose, and you're really getting tiny bits in there. It's a force multiplier. It scales humans, it doesn't replace them when it's done right. If your company is replacing people with AI, they're making huge mistakes. In 2 years, they're going to have no skills left. They're going to have no juniors to step up into mid-range, no mid-range to step up into seniors. Okay, it's a huge problem. One of the key techniques is combining models. So you can extract data out of large models to create domain-specific smaller models. Okay, so bigger isn't always better. Small models mean you can run them locally, sovereign. So you're not sending data to ChatGPT or anybody else. It belongs to you, it's controlled by you, and it stays with you. Now let's look at inclusivity in low resource languages or even mid-range resource languages. So the challenge is that inclusivity is not really happening in AI. Okay, everybody thinks it is, but you need to turn it around. And companies that are making it an opportunity are seeing big results. So let me explain that in a bit more detail. Global language inequality. There's dominant languages in it, and most of the others are getting ignored. Even countries like I live in Thailand. Thailand is not spending enough money creating data that can train models properly. Therefore, they're not getting the results they need. Right. Also, the biases are absolutely critical. So there's different approaches. Synthetic data helps, and we're getting better tools to do that. Community-driven corpora, domain-specific small models for underserved languages, these are good. Now, I'm seeing a lot of great case studies. So governments and NGOs in particular are using AI to preserve minority languages. It's working. It's working really well. Enterprises are adopting inclusive workflows to reach new markets. That's working really well. But what I'm not seeing is people at a government level in large enterprise really focus on helping the community enough. Now, let's put this in perspective. This diagram here has the world, and you can see a little yellow circle in the middle. There are more people inside that circle than outside that circle. And that's where I live. I'm here in Bangkok, Thailand. Okay, so I'm right smack in the middle of that. But there's over 3 billion people, 3.5 billion people, I think it is, sitting right there. Right, it's just over half. Right? But their languages aren't represented. So English is responsible for roughly 43% of the content on the internet today, if you use Common Crawl as a good basis. Chinese is second at only 4.67%. Right? It's tiny, right? It depends which data set you use. So these are taken at different times. But if you go down and look, Russian, German, Japanese, they're in the top tier, but they're all 4, 5, 6%. Then you get down to, major languages like French is only 4%, right? 4.5%. You get down to some of these languages down here, Arabic, right? 0.66%, right? Now look how many people speak Arabic. Right? There's a huge number speaking Arabic, yet it's only represented by such a small amount of data. And there are efforts by the Saudi government, UAE, and things like that. In fact, I've just been talking with people today about them here in Dubai to solve some of these problems. But there are real issues in data shortage. And while you can bridge over, you're not going to get the same level of quality as you do unless you get greater volumes. Right. Now, let's look at it another way. Here it is broken down. So North America represents 4.7%, right, of this, the population, right? It's all sitting here in Asia, 4.8 billion, right? That really breaks it down. And that circle makes a difference. Okay, so I want people to do a little bit of an exercise. We haven't had time to set up a poll, I don't think, have we, Isabel? Oh, we have. Awesome.
Yes, we have.
Here we go. Okay, so can people please choose what is their favorite chat tool?
Yeah. Let's give it a minute.
Okay, I'll drop mine in here.
Yeah. I see almost a clear winner.
Okay, how do we get the results on the screen?
Yeah, here we go. People are still voting. Just a second.
Still working? Okay.
All right, here we go. Here are the results. So
ChatGPT is pretty good. Okay, not unexpected. Okay, so 57% like ChatGPT. We're going to do another exercise now. Ask your favorite model, what is your favorite color?
Okay.
Sounds like a simple question, right?
It does. Oh, wow. Okay, let's give it a couple of more seconds. Please be quick. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna close on the count of 3.
Okay.
1, 2, and 3. Here we go.
What do we get?
Okay, we're getting blue,
Okay,
definitely.
blue. Yep, that's what I predicted. So blue is the winner. Now, do you know why I knew that in advance? Because the models are biased. Okay. And blue has a background that ties it to strength, corporate governance, all those kinds of things. Okay. And the model biases towards those. So if you look through a lot of big technology companies, banks, finance, they all have blue color logos, branding, all those kinds of things. Okay. It's a color of strength. So the models are biased towards that. Now, why is that important? Well, models can be very biased in every way you can think of, but they can also be biased by human to real time. So this year, DeepSeek launched, and the world jumped on board and started playing with DeepSeek. And the first screen was, let me talk about Tiananmen Square. Right. Now, that was a filter that was put on because the DeepSeek servers are running in the Chinese space. They're under Chinese law. So, of course, they're not allowed to talk about that. But what people missed on the same day is if they asked Google Gemini, tell me about the January 6th protests, Google Gemini also said, sorry, I can't talk about them. It was the exact same equivalent. Okay. Now, Google did it because they wanted to. DeepSeek did it because they were required to by law. There's a big difference. Okay, now Google's since lightened up. At that particular time, political tensions were high. And even if you asked it, who was the president of the United States, it was said, I don't want to talk about that right now. It wouldn't even say a thing like Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever it might have been on the day. Then you take it to your tools. So I did another test. I said, okay, I'll use Isabella as an example. Email Isabella, ask her what she thinks of the January 6th protests. And my Gmail came back and said, sorry, I couldn't do that for you. Okay, so that bias is going through models and it's everywhere. And if you're using the public models, they're changing daily. And sometimes it's just changing because it's got new data. Sometimes it's changing because that new data has been poisoned. It takes very little to poison data. And people are setting up crow farms to poison data now, and it's happening constantly. And sometimes it's happening because people want it to happen that way. So Elon Musk got called out on Grok, where they put a system rule where somebody says, who is the biggest spreader of misinformation on X? There was a system rule that said, if somebody asks a question along those lines, ignore anything about Donald Trump or Elon Musk and give a different answer. That was actually hard-coded into the system rules, and that was exposed in the media. So there's a lot of bias buried in here, and you have to be very careful with the outputs. Okay, so amplification. I talked about this a few times. Look at how it can make you better, how it can increase your knowledge. Give me, for example, before you had to go and search and hunt, right? Now you can say, give me examples of using this word in this context so I can understand it better. Explain it in context. Now, in that context, how would I translate that to Japanese? Okay, now you're building a glossary very quickly. Okay, and you can have it do various other validation steps, but you need to set up the stage. And I'll show you how you set up the stage shortly. We've got tools that do that. So multi-dimensional analysis, spotting hidden patterns, workflow orchestration, tying them together, right? But you have to match the task and resource with the risk. Okay, humans succeed where trust beats speed, but machines will scale much more. Now, in reality, there's a lot of jobs now that are going straight through, no human at all, and I'll show you some of those. But I want to focus first on people first AI, which is about secure and utilizing humans properly. So I just saw recently, I think it was the Dutch government brought in some legislation that if you're translating for a particular set of government entities and so on, you can't put your name on as a translator. You have to say you were some kind of editor. You can't take credit and you don't get paid the same way. I've got a post on LinkedIn about that if you want to find it. Sorry, it was about 2 or 3 months ago. I've forgotten the exact details. So that's taking away the rights of people who use AI, that want to use AI and use it properly, because lazy people don't use the process right. And they just say, translate this and go through with it. And they create AI slop. Now, here's an interesting factor. Right now, about 55% of all content on the internet has been created using AI. More than half. Okay, that is significant, because the vast majority of it, you can't tell that it was AI. At least half of that is actually very high quality. It's gone through processes and various other things. And the other half is what everybody calls AI slop and loves to complain about it and moan about it and everything else. Right. We're not going to avoid AI. Anyone who knows me in the industry and saw me 18 years ago when I entered the industry and I started speaking about machine translation at conferences, and everyone's like, oh, machines will never replace me. I'm creative. Well, guess what? AI is creative too, right? But I can make it even more creative than you. And that's a big difference. Now, that's a bold statement, but I'll show you how that works shortly. Okay. It's critical to be non-creative, though, in spaces like healthcare, finance, things like that, or even just car manuals, right? You don't want to be creative. If you're Toyota, why do you want to be creative in all your engineering manuals? They should be the same generation to generation, just moving it on with the updated knowledge. So creativity in that context is not right. Sovereignty law is really important as well. So in South Korea, they blocked Google from scanning all the maps like they have in the rest of the world. What that's left is Naver and Kakao Maps has been able to fly and thrive, their own businesses. They block and allow you not to export the data. Right. So Google couldn't use its size and dominance to wipe out the locals. Now, that's important in the translation space as well. And there needs to be some levels of protection. Okay. Now, I'm not saying don't use Google. I'm not saying don't use any AI. I'm saying the appropriate protection is needed. Sovereignty beats scale when enforced, and it keeps jobs local. Okay, so we're going to have a sneak peek at the WMT scores. Now, these are the machine translation competitions. And, you'll see some interesting patterns here. So it's the most prominent evaluation of MT overall worldwide. It's done every year, right? This year, okay, it was all the finals in a couple of days' time in China. So we're pre-announcing this. Our chief scientist, Philip Kuhn, is on his way to China now for this event. They did a lot of domains: news, literary, speech, education, dialogue, all sorts of stuff. The systems evaluated different research systems, online systems, LLMs, and also compared against professional humans. Okay. They did automatic evaluation with Comet and human evaluation with NQM and ESA. And they found some incredibly interesting results. Okay. Human evaluation was multidimensional. Okay. It looked at error spans, it looks at everything else. The automatic evaluation looked at more traditional metrics like BLUE and Comet for judgment based. Right? Now, the Comet is trained on human judgment data, but interestingly, the results didn't align with the human evaluators quite as well. So even though the machine rated some higher, Comet didn't quite align with humans. So a lot of the language models are expensive to run, but they're getting smaller. And one of the Chinese language models, very small, an 8B model actually crashed everything else. So you could run that on a tiny system. Okay. But here's the problem. Systems that were trained around Comet did well on Comet, but once you moved away and did other domains and things that Comet hadn't seen, Comet wasn't performing. Okay. So if you look at, for example, Japanese, okay, you can see the human scores and then the auto thinking was quite different. Okay, the scoring mechanism is obviously different. Okay, but Gemini did particularly well. Okay, on human rankings. Okay, where on the other side of it, you can see it's spanned quite a lot of different things. Okay, now when we go the other way, you see Arabic, specifically Egyptian Arabic, so not modern standard Arabic. A lot of LLMs can't make a distinction, so they did poorly. So in this case, GPT-4 did exceptionally well. Okay, Estonian. Okay, so again, Gemini was doing very well. Low resource languages are still a challenge, right? You can see it's not scoring as high. Okay, now let's look at how we build these models. So we start with a foundation model. Then we have monolingual text supervised fine tuning. Then we take parallel text and do supervised fine tuning. And then we do preference training on top of that. We actually go through and say yes, no, and we actually build content to domain. Now that's oversimplifying it, but it's just giving you a simple example. Okay, so the monolingual text is training on text in the target languages, not the source. So increasing large language model capabilities of the LLM by loading in domain specific in many cases. Now, in many cases, we create domain specific using LLMs. Now, when we're creating content as opposed to translating it, it's more fluid. Okay, if you translate it, it's not as fluid. Okay, so creating monolingual data using LLMs is actually very useful. And the parallel text, we take and we insert that data into the prompt and we distill it through the other models and create synthetic data. In many cases, we end up with other techniques as well. For example, we create synthetic documents that are bilingual. Okay, and that really helps a lot. Okay, the data quality matters. And just recently, Anthropic showed that just 250 bad documents can completely destroy a model. So back in the early days when I first started MT, people were saying, oh, we just need more data. The bad data will statistically fall to the bottom. That's never been the case, but that was the line of the day. Reality is high quality data always wins. Okay. So you generate responses from the LLM. This is how you train. So it's learning from those human preferences. Okay. Humans review it and they look at the good ones and the bad ones. Okay. And they build out the data. Now, it's still expensive and takes time, but this is how it can be done. Okay. So then you train a preference model. You learn from the feedback. So you come in, you update the model, you promote the higher scoring ones, you demote the lower scoring ones, and you cycle. And very quickly, you get a pretty high quality result in a very small model. Okay, so reinforcement learning from human feedback works well, but obviously the human feedback is expensive. But it's really suitable for MT. Quality estimation models can help, but they can also mislead you. Okay, let's take a look at an agent approach. So, the prompt may have things like style guidance, use of terminology. It may be descriptive, so formal language, writing in a passive voice, technical voice, and so on. That's all good, but it doesn't go far enough. Okay? It could include examples. Examples are great. And you can use your existing TMs to actually generate examples. So unfortunately, most LSPs don't have TMs in document sequence. They've deduped and done all these things. So that's harder. but you're able to use TMs and generate similar content to what the client is working on, and then translate using those as references. Okay, so you get the user request, the agent comes in, goes through the tools, it compares against the memory, it builds a plan to translate, and then it translates. Okay, this makes out a whole bunch of data. Okay, so you pre-draft. So I gave an example earlier where it goes through and it finds things that are difficult to translate, pre-translates them. It looks at things that should be abbreviated and pushed across to the other language. It looks at known phrases, known idioms, and all these kinds of things. It looks at context, so it can translate these things in advance as a glossary, and it builds all of that up. Then it builds a draft, and it translates an actual draft of the content. Okay. Then it moves to the next, and it refines. It's applying your glossaries, not just the generated glossaries, but also the glossaries that you've applied in advance, like a normal glossary. Now, getting through these things, then you finally get to proofreading. And when it's doing proofreading, it's doing a lot of little things. It's doing subject-verb agreement. It's doing a whole range of other linguistic, noun phrases and so on, and tying them all together, making sure it's fluent and smooth. So very quickly, after the original drafting, which comes from the machine, it then has the next stage where it's trying to polish it like an editor normally would. Now, these are human steps if you look at it. And so you can actually replace the drafting stage with a human and shuffle the order a little bit. So it's not just improving machine translation, this can improve human translation, right? Now, this is really important if you have a situation where, let's say you've got 5 people on a big project or 10 people on a big project, and they all stray a little from each other. They all have their own styles and so on. So this can bring those styles all back into alignment and make it very tight and very fluent. Okay. It can also check against the original source and make sure that it was conveyed properly. It can, adapt small things like phone number formats, address formats, and all those kinds of things. Okay. Now, these things can also be applied to speech. So here's some examples using our tools where it can take cultural phrases. So Asians often speak in positive negatives. It can be done or not. Will you or will you not come to my house this Friday? So it can change these common phrasings and adapt them. Just fluency. Yeah, this it's special that the new update and so on. It's horrible. That changes to just fluent text. Now, with speech recognition, often you get sentence boundaries that are not quite right and things like that. So we're able to fine-tune the most fluent boundaries. We're also able to go the other way and split the boundaries. So not just joining, but splitting. And we're able to fix mishears or even misspeaks. So this example here about the audio car was Jeremy Clarkson, and the whole episode was about Audi. And he actually misspoke. He said audio, but we fixed him anyway. And the correction was actually correct. He was supposed to say audio, Audi. And of course, then you can bring all of these together. So that's really important because then you can go to the next stages. Now, I want you to have a quick look at this. How many of you think you could translate this to another language other than English? Cheers, mate. I'll just grab a quickie. You had a proper surf when sand gets all up your clucker, down your gobbler too. Gobblers, right, and so on, right? It's Australian surfer vernacular. Okay. Now, this is where we can convert things to things that are possible to understand. So the first thing our AI tools do is we look at it and understand it. So there's 2 friends, likely male, familiar with each other and sharing casual conversation. They're at a beach or coastal setting, possibly after a surfing session, likely Australia, UK, or New Zealand. Okay. They talk about the situation and describe it, so it's building context. Right? Then the tone is informal, humorous, so we know when we translate, we should do the same. It's relaxed, carefree. Key elements to understand, and so on. Then it breaks down notable vocabulary. So cheers, mate, is like a hi or a hello or a thank you. In this case, it's a thank you. Like, thanks, mate. Cookie is not something that would happen at lunchtime with a partner. It is a snack or a drink or a meal or a beer after the surf. Right? A proper surf, right? Clacker is mouth or jaws. Gobbler is your Adam's apple. Beef cap is your skull, and anteater is your nose. So now going back here, you know how to translate it. And we can even suggest the actual words to translate as well. Okay. Now, in our tools, we set up various things like contextual proximity is turned on. Who are we translating for? Because that matters. Okay. What's the domain? What's the context? What's the tone? The register and formality level, target audience, the output locale, okay, all of those kinds of things. Then we tell it to add in the checks. So accuracy, adequacy, conciseness, naturalness, with a typo. It's an old screenshot. Article usage, gender agreement, subject-verb agreement, all these kinds of things. Target audience appropriateness. Now, a long time ago, we used to work with SDI before they got acquired, and we had a great example. Their linguist came back on their Thai content for subtitles, says, we love the Thai translations, but we have one major problem that we really hate. The profanity is too accurate for a Thai audience. So all the F-bombs from English movies are not culturally acceptable in Thailand. So we were translating too accurately. So we needed to tone it down. You can see it's looking for idiomatic expressions, creative adaptation, cultural appropriateness in a different context, paragraph cohesion, all of these kinds of things. Then we give it glossaries, term insertion. I'll show you that in a moment. Writing style, you can just upload content and say, write in this style, mirror the style. And descriptive rules, like, for example, in your customer style guide, if you see the brand name Dell, then always write it uppercase. If you see the family name Dell, then write it case sensitive. Okay, those can go in as descriptive rules and it will apply them. Okay, so this is term insertion. So you've got a technical engineering manual, and a lot of the technical terms are going to be very difficult to understand in the target language. So we're able to put them in brackets, either the English source or inside the bracket with the German source. Right. Now, this is by design, and you can run it through and set it up, and it will then put these into the document appropriately. So if you're doing engineering manuals, this is very, very useful. Okay, now let's look at how it can adapt and learn. So here is output in the blue color, and it's in raw MT. Now, we have here Fabio argues with his wife Carla, and she leaves the house. Okay. So we correct that because we've been told to spice it up a bit, sensationalize it as a synopsis to make it read. So argues with his wife Carla and she walks out on him sounds much better. This is a perfect translation, but this is more interesting. In the morning, he has to take the children to school. In the morning, he's left to take the kids to school on his own because his wife Carla has walked out on him. Later, Carla comes back and asks him for a divorce. Later, Carla returns and drops a bombshell. She wants a divorce. So it's really making it more interesting, but it's also carrying the context. And here's another example down here. This is exactly what was said in the Spanish. So Nacho takes the DNA test with the help of Emma, his secretary. When they want to do it to Yoni, they discover that he ran away. Is updated to they want to administer the test to Yoni, they discover that he's run away. So you can see how this can improve the content by understanding the context, as I just showed you with the surfer example back there. Okay, so it's able to read between the lines and write better, understand that virus means something for my health, not virus for my computer in the context given, and so on. Okay, now this is a workflow from a customer called UFA. Now, this content would have never been processed if it was done by humans, and humans actually get a small amount of work out of it. They're taking 28,000 hours of video content, it's soaps in German. We're transcribing that with a fine-tuned customized transcription engine that understands soaps. We then do automated post-editing on the speech that I showed you earlier. Then we do quality analysis, and if it's below a certain bar, we send it to humans. Now, the older, content that's from 1980s and so on, the audio quality is not as good, so the speech recognition is not as good. They fix it, and then it carries on down the line. We translate with a custom model, we edit automatically, and we score again, and if it's bad, then a human steps in. It's getting just a fraction of the data, about 1% is actually being called out. Then it goes directly and generates subtitles, and then those subtitles are pushed directly to YouTube. Now, per episode to do it with humans would have cost at least $1,000 to do this process for one episode. And that means it's not financially.
I think we lost a speaker. Or am I the only one who doesn't get any sound? Yeah, okay, unfortunately. Yeah, that's live webinars for you guys. Apologies. Let's give it a couple of seconds and see whether he can get back on the session. Okay. Okay, thank you, Laura. Let's give it a couple. Okay. I think Dion is coming back. Yeah. You're muted, Dion.
Sorry about that. My internet dropped just for a moment.
That's okay. Unfortunately, some people have had to leave because
right. I've got 2 slides left, so
hey, let's do it. Let's do it. Absolutely. Go on.
Okay. So that's obviously a big bonus. So it's a complex agent.
Will you share your screen, please?
Oops, sorry.
It's okay.
Last time. Here we go. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully we're back in business.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Really sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, so the last couple of slides. So this is a complex agent approach. Okay, it's got agents at every stage. It's got error detection. It's got grammar and style checking. It's got revision. And this is the real power of using AI technologies. Now, there's a lot of people doing similar to what I just showed. I just showed you an example, but you can see there is a lot of power there. Yeah, last slide. Okay, what are the future trends? They are going to be AI plus human. I mean, way back when I started talking about this with LSPs, it was written off, but obviously times have changed and NT is very dominant these days. There's going to be business shifts to annotation and regulated verticals, a decline, I believe, in overall traditional localization revenue, but many new opportunities for different localization revenues for the companies that adapt. There's a lot of rising compliance demands, and trust is a huge advantage. Future-ready LSPs are going to be winning by balancing automation, sovereignty, trust, and amplifying their human skills.